There's a new map showing allegedly the easiest countries in the world to immigrate to. If you're looking for somewhere to go, you might think easy is better, but I'm going to tell you why these so-called easy countries aren't all they're cracked up to be and give you some alternatives. So let's just go through the map and then I'll share my thoughts on how to find an easy country to move to. The alleged easiest countries to move to, according to one immigration service, are Canada, Mexico, Panama, Ecuador, Argentina, Portugal, Spain, Germany, Sweden, Finland, Thailand, Australia, and New Zealand. I happen to agree with them on the more emerging market countries. And so getting a residence permit in Argentina is easy. Everything's easy. Nothing's easy, as I like to say. But certainly the Argentinas, the Panamas, the Mexicos, the Ecuadors, these are accessible. European countries, they pretty much follow the rules. It may be dramatically delayed in some cases. Countries like Portugal that are very slow, they don't even follow their own rules in terms of how long it takes to issue a residence permit. The more developed countries are the ones that I disagree with. Canada, Germany, not particularly easy to move to, particularly if you are an entrepreneur, particularly if you are an investor or a high net worth individual. That's what we specialize in here at Nomad Capitalist. And so that's our expertise. If you're saying, hey, where do I get a job working in the agriculture sector? That's not going to be what we can help you with. But for folks who have a business and some money, the developed countries on this list strike me as actually very not easy. I'm Andrew Henderson, the founder of Nomad Capitalist. We have an entire team that's been spending the last decade helping over 1,000 high net worth and ultra high net worth individuals, both entrepreneurs and investors, legally reduce their taxes, increase their freedom with second passports, and grow their opportunities all around the world. And so if you give me just a moment, I'm going to tell you my thought process on how to define an easy country to immigrate to. If you're genuinely interested in moving somewhere, I promise this will be worth your time, so stick with me. You have to define easy. People are constantly Googling and searching for what's the easiest place. And the story that I've told before is that years ago, Paraguay was the perfect definition of fast, easy, and cheap. And you had folks from all around the world who didn't have much money, and they kind of just treated this in many cases as kind of what I call a romance novel for men. It was like, I'd like to move somewhere else. It sounds like what James Bond would do, but I'm not willing to commit anything to it. So it better be fast, easy, and cheap. And you really never get all three of those, but Paraguay came pretty close. And now, Paraguay, certainly, I mean, they just closed their residence program, so it's no longer even an option because too many people took advantage of it. But people thought they were going to get citizenship. They just didn't commit and they didn't get the results they wanted. And so the idea that that was easy, to me, wasn't really true. You've got to define easy for yourself. Easy could be affordable. Easy could be fast. Easy could be, are other people getting it? And so therefore there's a clear process. We had a client recently, he said, I want to get citizenship in Europe, and I will pay extra because I don't even want to go there. And if I can skip this one meeting by doing a power of attorney, then I'm willing to do that because every time I fly in the private jet, it's $300,000. For him, affordability wasn't the issue. His issue was, how can I spend more money to buy back more of my time? Now, as a company that works with a lot of high and ultra high net worth individuals, we see that more and more often. But we also understand that for some people, hey, let's not spend more money than we have to. So affordability could be deemed as easy. I think people often conflate those two. People sometimes think easy is fast, and yet while Portugal has a relatively straightforward process, or Mexico is a relatively straightforward, or Argentina is a straightforward process to get a residence permit, there is a good amount of bureaucracy. You need to know how to navigate it. There will be hiccups perhaps that come up, and it may not be particularly fast. Mexico is actually one of the few countries that has improved in terms of speed of issuing residence permits, but then they went and changed the process again recently. And so you've got to know what you're doing. This is something that we, with our R&D team, try and keep up with, but you've got to define easy. And so I think that when you look at, for example, Canada, the idea is, there's a lot of people moving from countries where they're going to look for a job, or they're going as whatever non-entrepreneur, non-investor status. Canada, Germany, Sweden, Finland, these countries do not really have clear investment or entrepreneur visa programs that are just really robust, straightforward, and available to all. Countries like Australia and New Zealand do have programs if you have multi-millions of dollars to invest in their investor visas, and the governments are constantly talking about getting rid of them. They've changed the terms recently for one of them. It's expensive, And again, I would argue that if you have that much money, the process of how much work you have to go through and the paperwork and everything to just get a residence permit, and then you've got to go and live there and change your whole life if you want to get citizenship, and then you're going to have to pay tax. I mean, to me, that doesn't sound very easy. Changing my entire life, having a lot of hassles, paying a bunch of tax along the way, and delaying gratification does not sound easy to me. Now, if I am someone who doesn't have a lot of money and I'm living in Vietnam, it might be worth it to me to do all that and get some kind of non-entrepreneur, non-immigrant visa. That might be deemed as easy because, hey, filling out forms, going through bureaucracy, waiting around for years, hey, that's not so bad. If you have money, I would say that is bad. And so the countries on this list, can you get a residence permit in Mexico? Yes, if you have an income of a couple $1,000s a month, you can do that. Argentina, the same. Ecuador, you can put about 40 grand and you can buy assets, you can put money in the bank. That's basically your capital. And so Latin America, I would also argue, Panama is more expensive now. They still have a retirement visa. There are still ways if you start a company in Panama to get residence, although generally it's more expensive now. I would say most of the Latin American countries are technically easy in that they're easy to qualify for. Most countries in Latin America, Panama to some extent, Colombia, these are some of the rare exceptions where Brazil, I think, income doesn't really help you. In most of the rest of the other countries, if you have income and you can structure that properly, they will give you a residence permit and then you can work towards citizenship. So Latin America is easy enough to move to in that most people from Western country who have some kind of provable income will qualify. Even if you don't have provable income, countries like Costa Rica will let you put money into the bank. They'll let you buy real estate. Countries like Colombia will let you buy real estate. They got rid of permanent residence, which was easier because you no longer, you didn't have to be there every year. Now you're going to start with temporary residence, and so that's harder because you have to go there. But again, you're just changing your lifestyle to spend half the year in a country to keep a residence permit for 2 years. Is that easy or is that not easy? Is that worthwhile? Because buying a property isn't really that difficult. You find a property and you send the money. We find properties for folks all the time, and they send a wire transfer. I mean, that's pretty easy. Is sending $200,000 to another country easier for you? If you're an entrepreneur, there are European countries that will easily grant you residence permits. Countries like Belgium want your business to be about Belgium. Other countries just want you to bring a business and pay tax. So Latvia, for example, has that. Estonia is not as easy, but they have a program. Lithuania has some kind of program. Again, not as easy. So there's plenty of opportunities, including if you have some kind of freelance business that you operate offshore. Italy, for example, will give you a residence permit for that. Again, relatively easy if you don't count bureaucracy, if you don't count what to file. The question is it easy afterwards that you set up your company in Latvia and now you need to figure out taxes in Latvia because your company is there and your company is liable for tax. So you've got to choose what you want to be easy. The guy with the private jet who is always willing to say, hey, all right, just spend more money there, his easy is leave me alone, let me just send money, because sending a wire transfer is pretty darn easy. But yet people conflate that as, oh, well, I meant easy and cheap. Well, easy doesn't mean cheap, and so you've got to define that. And so if you're an entrepreneur, some of the easiest places to immigrate, the UAE, for example, start a business in a free zone, get a residence permit for 3 years. Even if you don't want to live there, you can keep that active by just popping in every 6 months. So that's relatively straightforward. Again, if you're an American, now you've got to report that foreign corporation on a Form 5471. Is that difficult? I don't know, but is it easy? Everything's easy and nothing is easy. So if I'm an entrepreneur, I would think that easy is a place where I can get a residence permit by starting a company where I don't have a huge tax burden, I don't have tons of compliance. So the UAE is probably one of the ones that triggers that. If I'm someone who has an income, I would say Latin America works very well. If I'm retired, there's a lot of countries that have retirement visas. Greece has one, Thailand has one, Panama has one. We don't deal as much with retirement visas. But if I'm someone who just has money to invest, golden visas in Europe are pretty easy. Find a property and buy it. Greece, Italy, Spain. So Spain's on the list for that. They've also got a self-sufficient visa, but then you're stuck there and paying crazy Spanish taxes. Germany has a very weird kind of investor program. I don't really know that it functions as well, and it requires more effort going in. So I don't think that's as easy as, let's say, Portugal, where it's just a passive investment. Invest in a fund, buy a property. Sweden and Finland, we really haven't seen much of anything. That's if you want to go and get a job. So that's better for that. Ireland, by the way, start a business. Get a residence permit, or bring your own business from overseas, hire yourself in an Irish company, get a residence permit. Relatively easy if you already have the business. And so you've got to figure out what you already have. If you have an income, Latin America, and retirement visas work very well. If you're willing to start a business and you don't want a lot of hassle on an ongoing basis, the UAE can work. The Cayman Islands is more expensive, but that can work. There's other countries. Again, Europe, if you don't mind the ongoing hassle of running the company and paying some tax there. Not every country that you form a business in just grants you a residence permit by default. You start a company in Malta, you still got to go through another residence program in Malta. That's going to be more expensive in terms of the fees than other residence programs in Europe. So is that easy? Depends. Malta could be more tax friendly for some people. If you just have money to passively invest, European golden visas, Panama works. Again, Latin America works because if you don't have an income, you can still invest in property in many of these countries. If you have money to invest, Thailand, Malaysia, I think Singapore is not at all easy these days. I think Australia and New Zealand are not really that easy. South Korea could be easy, passive investment. I think that Asian countries generally more about leave you alone. Okay, you met the criteria, we're not going to bother you. Latin America tends to be more bureaucratic, and Europe tends to be more based on the rules and being more egalitarian. And so obviously you're going to have, in many of those European countries, taxes to pay. And so just because a lot of people move to Canada doesn't mean it's easy. Because if you're an entrepreneur or an investor, they have shut down the programs that benefit you over the years. And so don't follow what's easy for an employee. Nothing against employees, but don't follow what's easy for them. If I'm an employee living in Eastern Europe, I might say, yeah, I'd love to live in Germany. I will go through the work. But if you're not needing to earn wages somewhere else, why would you want to go to a high-tax country that doesn't have programs designed for people like you? I believe that people will tell us who they are. A lot of the countries in Central Europe, for example, the Czech Republic used to have relatively easy residence if you had some kind of small business or if you were willing to start a business. It's not really the case anymore. And so what we've told people who want to live in Central Europe is get citizenship by descent, get Malta citizenship through their donation program, and then just go and live in those countries. But that's the benefit that Europe has to offer. If you're a citizen, you can certainly go and live in any country you want. But the Czech Republic, for example, is saying we don't really want new entrepreneurs to come here. And I think they probably did that because they had too many entrepreneurs from parts of the world where they didn't want. And so you'll see that countries think, hey, we're here in the pecking order. If you're above us, you can come. If you're below us, we don't want you. But sometimes they've just got to throw the baby out with the bathwater. And so if you're a 7 or 8 figure earner, it's going to be easy enough to go to a lot of places. Certainly your passport could have some nominal effect. We had a very wealthy gentleman from Eastern Europe who had been rejected for visas in the US, Australia, and New Zealand. And I think New Zealand was only because Australia rejected them, and they said, okay, we're going with Australia. So they didn't like the fact that he was from Eastern Europe. Those are probably some of the few judgmental countries in the world. If you have money, most of the rest of the countries in the world will welcome you, with the exceptions of the Czech Republic, for example. The question is, how streamlined is the program? So Hungary is a residence program. It's become kind of clunky in recent years. And unfortunately, you never know entirely what you're getting into. This is one thing why having money works, because if you're looking for some of the programs that we've talked about, in the early days of Nomad Capitalist, the ones where it's just, hey, put $5,000 in the bank or just start a company, but they don't ask you of anything. Those are the ones that get whacked sometimes when you're in the process, because they just don't like issuing those. Or they'll say, here's the criteria, but in reality, they want 10 times more. We'll see that sometimes in Portugal, how much money you need to get a self-sufficient visa. We've seen that in Peru, you need 5 times the investment. But if you have money, you're generally going to be fine. Just don't look at things as if you are an employee. Those are the countries that I'd be looking at. So Latin America for income, Southeast Asia and East Asia if you have wealth, Europe if you can start a business or if you can bring some kind of passive income, or if you can make a larger investment in things like real estate for a golden visa. The question is, how much are you going to change your life, really? You can deal with bureaucracy. This is what we do for our clients. We fill out paperwork. We negotiate, across all the different jurisdictions when we're executing someone's holistic plan. We're figuring out, okay, you're investing in Spain. What does that mean for your U.S. taxes? How do you report that? That can all be dealt with on a one-time basis. The bureaucracy can be handled. Moving the money can be handled if you have it. To me, it's really the ongoing effort of, do you need to live in this country full-time to keep a residence permit? Not only is a U.S. green card very hard to get, but you've got to live there the majority of the time, and then you got to pay taxes, and then you've got to wait to get citizenship. That's not easy. They don't want it to be easy, and that's fine. But what are the ongoing requirements in terms of presence physically, in terms of taxation, in terms of bureaucracy, in terms of roadblocks they may throw up, in terms of if you want citizenship, are they actually going to give it to you, or are they going to be like Panama and say, oh, we don't like to naturalize people? That to me is where you define easy countries to immigrate to, because the goal, if you're going to live somewhere long term, might be in many cases to work towards citizenship to secure your ability to live there, or at least if you're in Europe, for example, to secure your ability to live in the bloc. And so, you're not going to have that in Asia. You probably don't want Asian citizenship in many cases. But, otherwise, if they're going to throw up roadblocks, that may not be easy. So these are all the questions that you need to ask yourself. These are the questions that we go through people with, and we try and figure out as part of a holistic plan what your preferences are, what your goals are. Would you rather A or would you rather B? There's no perfectly easy place. Nothing is fast, easy, cheap, and they just totally leave you alone. There's nowhere in the world where you just land, as a few people have asked us, and oh, welcome, here's your passport. We're so glad finally an American came. We just wanted to bring you your new citizenship to our country. Nobody's doing that. So you've got to figure out what are the parts of easy that are mattering to you.